But I like Karn, so I'm imagining Karn to be a hero. Authors don't write that. So what do you fictionalize? One last example is when you have Shakuntala, which is actually the very first Upakhyan of the Mahabharata. What happens when Shakuntala goes to Dushyant and says that this is your son Sarvadaman, or as he came to be known as Bharat, recognize him, adopt him, and make him the crown prince, and Dushyant refuses. Now, according to the Kalidas version, it's a very docile Shakuntala who goes to Dushyant's court, and it is the contrivance of that ring that actually causes Dushyant to recognize Shakuntala. That was Kalidas's creative interpretation. But what does the original Mahabharata tell us? Shakuntala was a fiery woman. I mean, here is a person who is Vishwamitra's daughter. Now, you can say anything about Vishwamitra, but he was not a docile sage. And his daughter, you are saying, is going to be that meek, submissive woman. No, the Mahabharata tells us when Dushyant says, I don't recognize you, and he says, whoever can come and claim to be my wife and present her child as my son, who are you, woman? Shakuntala basically tells him, who are you to talk to me like this? If you want to compare status, this is what Shakuntala says. My status is like that of a mountain. You are like a bilwa seed in front of me. And if we do these kinds of misinterpretations by projecting characters the way they were not, we also do a disservice to our entire faith and culture. Women in India always had a lot of agency, independence, and we somehow we distort them to conform to Western stereotypes of what women are supposed to be. We are indulging in the worst form of colonialism. We are doing the colonials' job better than they could. I don't know if that answers your question. I went off on a rant, but I thought I was in Arnab's studio for a minute, so I could. It's
okay. That was good. Okay. So, Amy, coming to you, your books on Ramayana and Mahabharata is now across everywhere. And you have covered the length and breadth of Akhanda Bharat also, in that sense. My question around this is a very unique one. Sri Rama, during his exile, traveled pan-India before he reached to Samudra Mandira. The tribals gave him a Loki bottle gourd. From there he built a lingam, which came to be known as Lokinath, and over time it became Loknath. So there are so many of that. Now, all across this, how do you see the Aryan-Dravidian divide that has been pushed into the narratives for years together now, and we are kind of trying to project and share the Akhand Bharat with all those references from across all corners? How do you see it developing, and how you can address this?
Namaste, Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Jai Shri Ram.
Ab thoda sa lag raha hai. There should be some energy while we are talking about these topics, right? So first of all, thank you so much, Chennai Lit Fest, for having me here. Thank you so much, Suryada. And always a pleasure to be here with my senior Abhinav ji. One correction, before I give the answer, one correction I want to do to the introduction that is made. I do not write fiction. In fact, what I do is debunk fiction. So the books I have written are, at least I like to claim it, I've tried to keep my assessments to minimum and state or share what Ved Vyas ji or Valmiki ji would have said. Now, not to say to look down upon fiction, because I think fiction has its place and it's very, very important. I don't think I have the caliber to write fiction. I think that also requires some real talent. I probably don't have that. So, not looking down upon fiction. You mentioned something very interesting, Suryada, that there are so many stories around the epics themselves, right? So many temples find their origins to some story in Ramayana, Mahabharata. And you asked Abhinav a very important question: what do you fictionalize? Now, interestingly, a lot of these stories about temples, about connections, vagere, actually don't exist in Mahabharata or Ramayana, Vedvyas ji's Mahabharata or Valmiki ji's Ramayana. Then how do we make sense of this? In fact, in the talk before this, Nanda Kumar ji said something very interesting. He said that Rukmini ji was actually from Arunachal, whereas people in Maharashtra think she's from Vidarbha. She can't be from everywhere and anywhere, right? Similarly, you have Hidimba temple in the northeast, but you also have Hidimba temple in Himachal. And they all think, ye to hamari hai, she is coming from here. How do we make sense of this? Which means something is true, something is not, right? Now, does that mean that we discard all that is wrong? Actually, no. There is a beauty in the way Indian Sahitya has evolved over time, right? And the connections, be it in Valmiki Ramayana, be it not be in Vedvyas ji's Mahabharata, doesn't matter. The connections actually tell us that the epics, Mahabharata and Ramayana, which are our itihas, very much our itihas, the way they have bound Bharat Varsha together, that everybody wants to be a part of it. Unlike today, when certain parts say, no, we are not your Aryans, yeah, we are somebody else, right? Today, we are becoming more reductive. We are trying to break away from that narrative. Whereas then, the narrative was to associate yourself with those stories, right? And get legitimacy for whatever stories you have. Now, all these stories had a lot of bhava, shraddha in them. The idea was not to break. The idea was to make and keep together. Should such creative liberty be allowed? Absolutely, right? I'll give you another example. The Kevat Prasanga does not come in Valmiki ji's Ramayana, but it comes in Tulsidas ji's. And it is a beautiful prasanga, right? It shows how much inclusive a Raja Sriram was. It is a story that connects, it doesn't break. Those stories are also important. Fictionalizing some of them is perfectly okay. But then where does it get tricky? Lot of examples Abhinavji already gave, the Draupadi example, the Karna example, and maybe we'll talk about it later. But also to tell you, this is not a current thing. A lot of you must have heard that shloka. Suto va suta putro va yova kova bhavamiham devayatan janmakule madayatam tu paurusham. And every time people talk about Karna, they'll also chant this shloka. He's saying, let me be Suta, let me be a Sutaputra. How does it matter? It is not in my hands. The Bhagwan decides the Kula, but it is my Paurusham, it is my Parakram that decides who I am, right? And we get super charged up by these things. Now, this is not a recent shloka. No. It goes back 2000 years. Written in a play by Bana Bhatta Narayanji in Veni Samharam. So this creative liberty has happened then also, right? It has happened then also. Of course, the idea even in those would be little bit of creative liberty, which does not really change the character of the person themselves. But this has happened. We have allowed creative liberty. But where does it get tricky? When people start thinking that is the truth. There is a beautiful book, actually very beautifully written, and I know that a lot of dancers have used that story from fictionalized story of Ramayana to talk about Sita, or to talk about the women. And they show a prasanga where Shurpanakha and Sitama, they are sitting together. Okay. And both of them are sharing their pain. Now, this is actually a beautiful conceptualization of how women bond, how they share their issues. But you know where it gets tricky? You know who they are bitching about? Who they are bitching about? What do you think? Who should they ideally be bitching about? Shurpanakha's husband was killed by Ravan. Yeah? Shurpanakha was made widow by Ravan. The whole problem of Shurpanakha was because her husband was killed. She is the one who lies to Ravan, saying that the Sita is very beautiful, she is worthy being of your wife. Tava bharya anurupa, so go get her. Yeah? She is not saying this is for my nose and ears, you are my brother, take my revenge. No, 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 no. She is gaming Ravan. Why? Because she knows how lusty he is, right? But instead of him, these two ladies are bitching about Sriram. Imagine. Now, yes, you could have taken a creative liberty here. You could have made those two girls, women, express their pain, but not in a way like, why were the ears and nose of Shurpanakha cut to begin with? Because she tried to attack Sitama, right? She tried to kill her. And now imagine Sitama and they are cribbing, arere, see, Shurpanakha is saying, see what your husband did to me, see he also left you, and Sitama is Beukoof kya? She doesn't understand that he saved me. But these things become so popular and we love victimhood. What is wrong with us women? We love to be victimized. Bhad, 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 bhad. Asus will come and we will like, wow, 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 wow. Kya likha hai? I see myself in her. All that will happen. Yeah. Now this is how we are gamed, using our own epics, and the narratives are changed. Now coming back to your question, yeah, because this is all sort of tied together. What kind of fiction can be great and allowed, and where is it where we as readers need to be very, very aware? There's a fiction written about Ramayana, and they say Ramayana is no more about Dharma Yuddha. No, no. It is about an Aryan Ram coming and defeating a Dravidian Ravan. And so people here start thinking, no, no, our man is Ravan. Yeah, our man is Ravan. We are all his santati. Arey Baba, let's go back to what Valmiki ji has said about Arya Dravida. Let us see what he has said about Arya. To begin with, who is the father of Ravan? Vishrashrava. Rishi Vishrashrava. He is a Brahman Putra. That Valmiki ji doesn't say, so I will not make that But yeah, that is also one of the theories, right? Valmiki ji doesn't say where he was born. But the point is, he is a Brahman Putra, and the word Arya comes multiple times in Valmiki Ramayana, multiple times. Anarya also comes multiple times. Yeah? How and where does it come? I'll show you, I'll tell you. So, Kaushalya Ma is called Arya. Kekai is called Anarya, Arya both, but also Anarya. Why? Because she makes such, outrageous demands of Ramasya Aranyagamanam, Bharatasya Abhishechanam, and all that she says. So she is called Anarya. Vali is called Arya by Mandodari. Sugriv is called Arya. When the Vanar Sena is running away because of Kumbhakaran's, they are scared of Kumbhakaran, Angad is telling them, don't be Anarya and run away. What will your family think of you? Stand here and fight. So Angad is also telling that Anaryas are the one who would run away, right? Mandodari is calling Ravan Arya. Ravan is calling Vibhishan Anarya. Why? Because Vibhishan is telling him what you're doing is wrong. Now so what does Ravan think of himself? He thinks of himself as an Arya only, right? So what does it tell us? One, Arya in our usage, parampara ke anusar, was never a racial shabda. It was not a race suchak shabda. But even if you imagine it to be a race suchak shabda, Sri Ram and Ravan consider themselves from the same race. Now, why is it that something that is so obviously given in our itihas is lost to us? Because we don't read our itihas. We try उसके कारण क्या होता है, I have like lot of times girls come up to me and they're like, ma'am, Shri Ram को पूजना क्यों चाहिए? Why should we even worship Shri Ram? See what he did to his wife, right? That is one aspect. The other aspect is the whole Karna thing, the Jati thing. The women aspect, women are always tortured. Abhinav already spoke about it, that what women were, and maybe we discuss further. But thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Amy. So I'll just take one last question for Abhinav ji. In the entire narrative of writing a fiction versus scriptures, in the originality of the events, Puranik Itihasa mentioned in the scriptures, what is that thin red line? Because Amy also very rightly mentioned on the narratives. What is that thin red line that we should be mindful of for the benefit of our audience, while reading?
Commerce cannot be that dividing line, that if it makes money, it is right. If it doesn't make money, it is wrong. That is anartha. That is not the dharma, it is anartha. But I grappled with it for some time, and right or wrong, or half right or half wrong, I came to the conclusion that it has to be a combination of, do you have the shraddha? Do you have the adhikar? If you're changing something, because there are people who will say that Goswami Tulsidas or also changed elements in the Ramayana. When he take a look on derivative fiction, then the very first book, Abhya, is a wonderful example of how you can create an entirely new original story that is set in the Puranic universe and do a good job of it. Gautam Chikarmane's book, The Tunnel of Varnavata, is another example that is set in the Mahabharata era. The principal characters of the Mahabharata play a sort of a role in the background, but it is an entirely new story and very well done. So, what is the red line? It has to be Shraddha and Adhikar. It cannot be Arth.
Wonderful. Wonderful, Abhinav ji. I think as Adi Sankara in his later years wrote a number of hymns and verses to foster bhakti in the hearts of men, creations of his Mahisasur Mardini, Ranganathashtakam, Jagannathashtakam, Bhajagoviddam, all these he realized, and when he wrote, he realized that knowledge, if it doesn't culminate into bhakti, then it is a useless tinsel. So now, before going to Amy with the last question, I'll just share one bit of information from an Akhanda Bharat perspective. There is this book called Yukti Kalpataru, written by Maharaj Bhoj of Gurjara Pratihara family in the 10th century. He was a king of Malwa, the ancient Malwa of Dhar, which we know as Dhar today. In this book, he defines how ships should be made. And in his book comes out the very information of the concept of stitched or sewn ships, which were prevalent at that time. But what we don't know, why he, propagated that idea. And he, sitting in the middle of Bharat, propagated and, advised this for Kalinga, for Cholas, for the western coast, when he did not have to do anything with the shipping. Because if you use nails in making the ships, there were magnetic rocks in the sea which used to pull down the ships. And that is from that perspective, he wrote Yukti Kalpataru, where he strongly advised building of stitched or sewn ships. We often come across Government of India's concept of making stitched ships in the Kalinga sector with the help of Indian Navy. But what is important for all of you to know is, it is the concept of seaman ships, where the stitching happens like this in a zigzag format. So with that, I will come to Ami with the last question for the session. Yaggaseni, often portrayed as Nihatta, Durbal, but I know personally, being an avatar of Mahamaya, how fearsome she was. And why don't you share some anecdotes, from the original Mahabharata, which portrays her CEO-like capabilities of marshalling multiple resources, of doing multitasking across the base for the Pandavas.
So Draupadi is one of my favorite topics. I love to speak about her. Unfortunately, the fiction around Draupadi is such which makes her, they always try to show her as a strong woman, but in what way? As a rebel who's fighting the society. Yeah. But does empowerment mean only fighting the society? Does it mean that unless you fight the society and break the norms, you can't be empowered? I think the whole idea of empowerment needs to change. What is empowerment? Empowerment means having agency, being trusted with responsibility, doing your kartavya. Why is that not empowerment? And in fact, that's the beauty of our epics of Itihas, Mahabharata and Ramayana. Every single woman character is so strong, not in the sense of always trying to break the norm. You don't have to. You can be a part of society building. You can be a part of Rajya building. And that is the role which Draupadi has played. Now, interestingly, all the fiction about Draupadi always talk only about some love angle with Karna. They will talk about how the Vastraharan happened, vagere, vagere, all of that. But there's a beautiful prasanga in Mahabharata itself, which talks about what Draupadi was. In fact, every time Draupadi is spoken about, the woman leaves an impression, the way she talks. Be it her discussion in the Vastraharan during the Sabha. During the Sabha, when Dhritarashtra tells her that when Dhritarashtra is very scared because now Bhim has made all these oaths that he will kill, he will rip open Dushasan's heart and all that, and then there are these nimittas which are very bad. So when Dhritarashtra is now scared and he tells Draupadi, "Arey, no, you are my Putravadhu, you are like my daughter, I am giving back everything, you ask me Vardhan, I want to give you Vardhan." So first she says, "Please free my husband, my Yudhishthir, from becoming a slave, because I don't want my eldest son, Prativindhya, to become a slave, to be born to a slave father." Dhritarashtra says, "Okay." Then he says, "Ask more. I want to give you more." She says, "Okay, please free all my 4 brothers also, 4 husbands also, and let them get their shastras back." Okay. She could have asked for a lot more, but she says, "No, ensure that all my 5 husbands are free of dasatva and give them their shastra back." Dhritarashtra says, "Ask more." She says, No. As a Kshatrani, I am aware of what my adhikar is. I am allowed 2 Vardhans, and I have asked that. Now, taking back Indraprastha is the kartavya of my husbands, and I have full faith in their purushartha, in their parakram. They will take it back. I don't need to do it for them. I'm happy with just this. Look at the character of this woman. Then when they are in Vanvas, it so happens that one day Shri Krishna and Satyabhama come to visit. Okay, visit all of them. And they doing their gappa and they are talking and all of that. And Satyabhama and Draupadi get talking. Because the children, the 5 sons of Draupadi, they are spending their time in Dwarka as well as in Panchal. So she's asking about her sons and Satyabhama is answering and all of that. And then at one point, Satyabhama is like, "Draupadi, you have to tell me something. I have a question." And she's like, yeah, ask. She says, "How is it that your husbands, you have 5 husbands, Tava mukha preksha satatam pandavaha. These Pandavas are always looking at your face. How have you become your Vashanugaha? How is it that you have completely controlled them? I have one husband, Krishna. Him also I cannot control. You've controlled 5. How is it that they're so much in love with you and they do everything that you ask them to? And she says, is there a Vashikaran mantra? If you have a Vashikaran mantra, tell me, I'll use. And Draupadi says, no, Satya, there is no Vashikaran mantra and don't even go that way. It will do more harm than good. But you are right. My husbands respect me a lot. Let me tell you why. And then there is this whole beautiful 3 sargas of Draupadi telling Satyabhama how she lived her life as the queen of Indraprastha, as the wife of the Pandavas. She talks about her role as the wife, so how she took care of their other wives, children, Kunti Ma, how she ensured that the Pandavas could always finish their Nitya Karma and all of that. Then she talks about her responsibilities for the Rajya and the Rajmahal. There she says that we used to have lots of guests, like in lakhs, who would come to eat. And to serve those lakhs of guests, there were lakhs of servants, there were lakhs of thousands of maids and helpers. I knew all of them by name, she says. And I knew Krita Kritam, what was done, what was not done, what was pending, what was not pending. I knew if everybody had eaten, not eaten, but I also knew if the helpers and the maids had eaten or not eaten. I would wake up before everybody, I would sleep after everybody. So she says all of this, and I can keep talking about it, but 2 things I have to say. At one point, she says, Sarva Ragnyam Samudayam Ayam cha Vyayameva cha Aham Eka Aham Vedmi. Sarva Ragnyam Samudayam. The finances, the income of the entire Rajya. Ayam Vyayameva cha. What came and what went away, income and expenditure. Eka Aham Vedmi. I was the only one who knew it. I had complete transparency and insight into what we earned in Indraprastha, what was the expenditure. Then she says, Adrishyam Varunasyeva Nidhi Purnam Mahadudhim. So Nidhi is treasury. So she says, the treasury of Indraprastha, how was it? She's like, it was vast, like the ocean. Like the ocean has lots of ratnas. That's how our treasury was. Eka aham vedmi kosham. She says, I was the only one who knew what the treasury was. She says, if Yudhishthir had to go on a yatra, lakhs of ghodas and hathis and everything would go, lakhs of rathas would go. He would take with him lots of gifts. I was the one who managed all of this. Now imagine what kind of trust the Pandavas had on her, that she had complete insight into finances, which the even brothers did not have. And when will that kind of trust come? When she has proven her capabilities, when she has shown that she's trained enough and she can take care of that, right? That was Draupadi. And I say that all the time. She was almost like the CFO and COO of Indraprastha. And we think of her only as Vastraharan. Imagine. I'll say one last thing about Draupadi, because I think that prasanga is very rarely spoken about. In the end, all her sons get killed because of Ashwatthama. Ashwatthama goes. The sons are alive. This happens after the war has ended, right? The 5 sons get killed. And she's obviously upset and angry. And she says, I want revenge. So the brothers go, Bhim go, they all go, and they basically get the money out of Ashwatthama's head. We know all that. After they come back, she sees the money and she's quiet. And Bhim tells her, see, he's our guru's son, so we didn't kill him. Draupadi says, I completely understand. He's your guru's son. The way he's respectable to you, he's respectable to me. My sons deserved a revenge. They have gotten their revenge. Now I don't ask for anything more. The criminal has been punished. That makes me happy. I don't want anything more. And the lady goes back to resuming her task at the Maharani of Indraprastha once again, in spite of all her own pain. This is the grace and character of Draupadi. Do you even need fiction to appreciate this character? In fact, I think she's a role model for all women that we have here today. Yeah. So, thank you.
So with this, we'll open up the session. Only one question with the time that we have left. Any questions from the audience? Most welcome. I think Mr. Agarwal has a question. Can someone, a person from there?
You may have to come to the podium to ask your question.
Okay, I'll just help.
This is regarding fictionalization you told, but this is a creativity. The essence should not be changed. We have that thing, this right which is being given in Sanatan, that we can interpret the way we want. We can have multiple viewpoints. But this creative freedom, what is the type, why this narrative is not being portrayed across the spectrum? We do not need to change the essence. And this is, and the interpretation, the creative interpretation is available in Sanatan, which is not available in an Abrahamic religion. That is the blasphemous in that. So the fear psychosis is being created. The individual liberty of freedom and expression is available in Sanatan. I don't see that narrative actually going across. We need to create a yardstick rather than, we have to portray our narrative, our viewpoint, rather than speaking against Abrahamic religion or something like that. But we need to say that blasphemy is actually, the people have glamorized it like anything, the Western narrative. The individual creativity and freedom of expression is there. It comes with a responsibility. I totally agree with you, ma'am. The essence is
Is this? Is Shambhukwat, when people get super defensive about it, I would say, do we understand what has actually happened? Or are we just listening to that we are being told that it is Jativadi? Yeah? Or is there something more to it? So because we don't have time, I'll not get into the story per se. But what I've done in Ramayana Unraveled in my book is that I have put it as an epilogue. And I've tried to explain with multiple examples from Ramayana that even if we assume Shambhukwat is true, we really don't have to be defensive about it. It is actually Sri Ram upholding dharma and nothing at all. It is basically that. So sometimes we get defensive over something just because we don't know it. If we read the Itihas for what it is, we'll realize that it's not something we need to worry about.
So I think, okay, last question. Just make it short. No.
For the next program, we
so-
have kindly excuses.
You can take it off.
Thank you so much, the panelists, for giving us a beautiful insight into the scriptures and the stories and fictions around the scriptures. May I now request Sri Bharat Gopu to come and honor the guests here. And there was a wonderful way of putting across Shakuntala's bright, brilliant character and the explanation of Arya and Anarya. And to the women here, there was a beautiful message here. We were once ruling and we must miss the bus and better not miss it one more time and get on to it. May I request the organizers to come and honor the guests, please? They're coming.
If anyone is interested in an offline discussion, there is a very striking parallel in one episode of the Mahabharata between what happens there and what happens in the Godfather. I kid you not. That's a teaser, by the way.
And and Ms. Ani Ghanthara, we all do take it very seriously that Ravana is a Brahmin, and the Thank you so much for traveling through the stories based on the scriptures. And now we move on to a session with the academicians. We have named it as VC session. May I request Dr. Shanti Shri Dhulipudi Pandit, VC of JNU, and Ujjwala Chakradeo, VC of SNDT Women's University, to come on to the dais. And in conversation with them is our own Shefali Vaidya here.
Namaskar. So this isn't so much in conversation, actually. This is such a power-packed panel to begin with two of the most accomplished academicians of the country here. So I am not going to stand between them and you for a long time. I'm just going to introduce the topic. The topic is Ek Bharat, Shreshth Bharat. How do we take education from here? And I'm sure that both these learned personalities have lots to say about this. The only thing is, because we are running short of time and we are trying to stay as close to the timetable as possible, they don't have as much time as I would like them to have. So I'm going to keep my interaction to the minimum, and I would request Shanti Shri Pandit ji, the Vice Chancellor of JNU, to put forth her opening statement.
எல்லாருக்கும் வணக்கம். சென்னை இஸ் மை சிட்டி. நான் இங்கே வளர்ந்தேன் சென்னை 28 மந்தவள்ளியில். ஸோ படித்தது ரோஸ்ரி மெட்ரிக் ஸ்கூல், பிரசிடென்சி காலேஜ், இல்லைன்னா மாநில கல்லூரி. ஐ எம் ஆல்சோ த ஃபர்ஸ்ட் உமன் அண்ட் ஆல்பனஸ் வைஸ் சான்சலர் ஆஃப் ஜேஎன்யூ. ஸோ தமிழ்நாட்டிலேருந்து போன பெண்ணு தான். அண்ட் வி ஆர் சேஞ்சிங் ஜேஎன்யூ. We have brought in JNU multiple narratives. உங்களுக்கு தெரியும் that we have renamed our think tank from Jawaharlal Nehru to Vidyaranya Institute of Knowledge and Advanced Studies. It is being on 29th, the Sringeri Mata Shankaracharya has blessed the statue of Vidyaranya, which has already come into JNU. With it, we also have Thiruvalluvar and Lord Nataraja. So that is Vikasit Bharat. Lord Shiva has come in, and through the Odisha chair, Jagannath will come in. So Vishnu also comes in, and hence JNU is as Indian or as Bharati as any university. I am just going to go to the topic due to paucity of time. The first issue I want to put before all you learned audiences, who suppressed the Indica narrative. As it was said in the last session, the definition of history is facts are sacred. Interpretations can vary. But JNU historians changed it. And the Marxist wokes, or what I call the cancel culture of the Nehruvian state, and including the Dravidian state, is interpretations are sacred, facts can vary. And that is what has happened. Why? I'll give you the Nehruvian consensus. Martanda Varma defeated the Dutch. Anywhere in the history books? Or we have Rajendra Chola, also called as Gangai Konda Chola. Gangai Kondanana north-south were divide. And all of you know in Purananur, also which is older, Sangam literature, you have the mention of Rama and Sita. So my question is, how are we alienating this? And I think this is basically a colonial project or the project of the invaders. And this is very important. And basically this began with the Aryan invasion theory constructed by the colonials, especially Max Muller. Max Muller did it in the 1800s for the benefit of the colonials. And this was done by Alexander Campbell. And for Tamil Nadu, it was Bishop Robert Cardwell, who wrote the Dravidian grammar. It is in that book he put in the seed of the so-called Aryan Dravidian divide, which is again goes against the racial theory. Sarvepalli, the Radhakrishnan said, we are a mixed race. See, many of us, do we even look South Indian? When I studied in JNU as a student, many people thought I was a Punjabi Jat. Because they said, you don't look like a South Indian at all. So we are a mixed race. So this theory, and even that the Brahmins are Sanskritized and they have come from outside. This is also again a myth. Why? The Raki Gargi excavation that was done in Haryana proves by carbon dating that we are a civilization that is 8,000 years old. So even the Europeans were picking up stones at that time. How can they come and civilize you and me? We civilized them. If you know, we were an outward-looking civilization. Same with the Cholas. We did not normalize loot, plunder, and rape. And in history, you cannot normalize it. Whereas the Cholas did it by trade and commerce. The proto-states, the whole of Southeast Asia, was done by the Tamil kingdoms. You don't have this type of plunder. So if you see clearly this whole myth, it is brought out very well in the book by a famous historian called Airavatam Mahadevan. He wrote, and his student K. Balakrishnan, who is a civil servant, wrote, please read it, a very good book called Indus to Vaigai. There is, if you see the Keeladi inscription, the Tamil Brahmi script is very close to the Indus Valley script. So where is the division? So and even this issue of caste, it is not Varna and Jati. So first they demonize the Brahmins, and then they demonize the Hindus or the Hindu culture or the Hindu phobia. So I call it cancel culture. Before the wokes and the left discovered it, I think our people were smarter. And I would only add saying that the idea of Kumari Kandam, the sacred geography, our connections up till Japan, the similarity between Japanese and Tamil. And hence, this whole issue of or even see Shiva, who is the presiding deity of not only in Kashmir, but also in Tamil Nadu. Chidambaram is taken as the center of the universe, especially and if you read Unmai Velakam, verse number 36, it tells us that creation arises from the drum. Protection proceeds from the hand of hope. From the fire proceeds destruction. From the foot afloat gives release. It will be observed that the fourth hand points to this lifted foot, the refuge of the soil. I would tell many of you, please read Ananda K. Kumaraswamy's brilliant essay called The Dance of Shiva. And this greatly inspires. Now I would only try to finish up because she has given me very little time. that one, we are the feminist civilization of the world. Draupadi is the first feminist, not Simone de Beauvoir. Sita, the first single mother. Kannagi, the first citizen activist. We are also the first nature-centric civilization, Panchabhutas. Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, you have the lingams named after the Panchabhutas. The Western people need not come and teach us on environment. And even on LGBT, Shikandi. So we are a very, very modern. So this whole idea of the modernization project does not work for us. We were much modern before even, tradition, modernity divide that the West brings in. Second is decolonize the Hindu mind. Please do not think that we are inferior. And we have the Nehruvian state cancel culture. We need to bring back people like Sri Aurobindo, who got his enlightenment in Puducherry. And Swami Vivekananda also. We have in Chennai or even in Kanyakumari. And Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan. I would say please read The Hindu Way of Life. This is extraordinarily important, and I think that if Vikasit Bharat, Ek Bharat, the universities, especially like JNU, which is India's topmost university, the most important is narrative power. We have achieved political power, but if you want to sustain political power, it is only narrative power. And narrative power is what? So please write, not only as Dandakumar ji say, talk, please talk, but also please write. University teachers, give research projects to your students on these gaps in history, which are huge. And let us bring back the factual history back, not the interpretative history. Because the interpretative history follows Goebbels. See, one thing, Hitler was intelligent, don't think he's an idiot. Joseph Goebbels said, tell a lie and repeat it 10 times, it becomes the gospel truth. That is what the JNU group of historians have done it. And we are trying to de-school everybody, and I hope we have succeeded and we are succeeding, but it's a long process. And each one of you need to be a part of it. And hence in JNU also we are changing the way we are doing research as well as this. So far, last 2 years, there's Shanti. We hope we'll get into prosperity phase as well. Thank you all. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much, ma'am, for that very short but very, very impactful speech. And I'm glad you talked about the fakeness of the North-South narrative. For the life of me, I don't understand how Dravida, which was simply a word to describe geographically the location of the Indian peninsula, it means it is surrounded by Drava, liquid, on all three sides. So anybody who lives in this peninsula is Dravida. So how did the geographical term became associated with the identity politics is actually a subject of great study, and how it's been distorted. Yes, how it's been distorted and made into a racial term. But that's but I have a theory about this, and that relates to Dr. Chakradev's topic actually. I think our decline started when we reduced our temples to just places of worship. They never were. They were institutions in itself. They were institutions of education, commerce, arts and crafts, Sangeeta, Kala, everything. And I would like Dr. Chakradev to talk about it. What roles did temples play, and what
for us. And beyond that, Satish Grover and very few Indians who wrote history of architecture had those books with them. And accidentally, one accident, second accident, third accident, and we have the all beautiful temples scattered all around us. Then Claude Batley, who became the first head of the department of JJ College of Architecture, he says that, yeah, there are very good pieces of architecture around and people have not realized it. Indians don't know about it. Let me do the documentation of these. And then when I do the documentation of these structures, I'll give the scholarship of 1,000 rupees. And he became a very great person of conservation of the Indian architecture. Yet at that point of time, the narrative that came up was, yet there is so much of distortion all over. There is no similarity and no order as it was there in the Roman architecture, because Roman architecture is what we were studying, and we cannot define the order. He didn't realize there's a diversity within us. And this diversity is the character, as was very rightly said by Nanda Kumarji in his first lecture, that we cannot have the history similar to theirs. Likewise, we do not have the description of our architecture as theirs. We do not have the ancient architecture and the middle architecture and the recent architecture. Architecture is a mirror of the society, and similarly, the way we were, the architecture was diverse. There's a diversity in entire India, and this diversity, when we look at it, is reflected through our architecture, through our temples as well. And we have though there is a continuity, we have a diversity in the expression of these temples from north to south and from east to west. All temples are temples, yet all of them are so different, so beautiful. These gems, which are scattered all around us, are the mirrors, are showcasing the thought processes and the technology which was prevailing at that point of time in our Bharat. Unity in diversity is what has been told to us all these years. Do we really want to say that it is unity in diversity or diversity in unity? So diversity in unity, if we say, then we consider our Bharat as one human body. And then we say my finger and my head and my legs and other things. But when we say unity in diversity, the leg is a different entity, eye is a different entity, and we're trying to pull them together and put them here. So if we have this complete change in our lookout, in our viewpoint, in our standpoint, only then we will be able to look at our Bharat in the real sense. Is through education it can happen, and education is a tool to change the society. Yes, we need to believe this, and we can make changes through that. We have been always studying that history of Bharat is more than 5,000 years old. We needed people like Michael Denodo to come here, British, to say that no, there's something more to it. The river Saraswati, though it is hidden in Prayag, we have been saying Triveni Sangam, but we do teach in history of architecture also, and in many histories, that our history started with in 2,500 or 5,000 years ago from now by Indus Valley civilization. Where has Saraswati civilization gone? Why have not been the research done, so much of research done by so many of, even in Pune, Vakankar organization and Bhandarkar organization, they are doing the research on Saraswati river. And what was that Saraswati river? And why on her banks the civilization which developed led to Indus Valley civilization, the merging of the two civilizations, the flow of the river Saraswati will show us the expanse of the entire civilization of Bharat. And on her banks we flourished. We flourished, and there are the best example with the remains, small part of that existence is in the form of Sharada Peeth temple, which is now in Pakistan. Yet it's a example, best example, remaining example of architecture of temple university. We know about Takshashila, we know about Nalanda, but we hardly talk about Sharada Peeth. Sharada Peeth was full of all those treasures of the knowledge and the literature. How many years ago? We just don't know. It was a university in itself and it was a temple. So what you rightly said, Shefali ji, temples were not just the places of worship. They were the places of worship of almost everything that the human race or human being should revere to or should do puja of. And this is the best and the oldest example remaining probably is that of the Sharada Peeth there. Then we have here Sringeri Peeth also. The library of Sringeri Peeth and the library of Sharada Peeth, if we compare, are the best examples where the education and temples were the same places. Who else would then you all know about how the Tanjore temple and the dance performances and learning the dance art. So dancing, music, and also the sculpture and art forms and the entire facade of the temple, which is so beautifully designed. That entire thing is a part of an education for we Indians or we Bharatiya, and right from those days till here. So every person in the society had to go to the temple for some reason or the other. And recently we have been saying that those are the temples and we are here in the society. So the entire formal education has been devoid of the spirituality because we have kept temples away from our entire life and some of us try to go to the temple only for some part of our day, maybe once in a week or maybe sometimes at the time of a festival. Sometimes, yes. So myself and my husband, we have made it a point that on every Saturday we will go to Hanuman Mandir and pray there. And for many years we have been doing that. Because unless we decide the day for us, see, there is a liberty given by our culture to us. We don't have to go on every Friday, but we can go on any day in the temple. So we make a rule for ourselves and we go there. So that's how probably the diversity which has been given and the flexibility which has been given to us by our culture can be reinterpreted by us in this manner. Then there is these temples which were the places for every social activity were also the places of education for us. And one example, my recent experience I would like to share with you all, how the continuity in the culture can happen through these structures, is I went to Kolhapur where I had studied in my 11th and 12th standard. And after that, after 45 years, I visited recently last month. And I was looking for my house, my place where I lived. And everything had changed and I could not even make out anything about my house also. But then I went to Kolhapur Amba Devi Mandir. And then I could relate everything. Because the mandir remained as it was. So those are the stable parts of our society. They are continuing there. The stability to the society, there has to be some focal point. These temples are the ones which are there. Who built them? And why should we know about these temples? We need, and what is the connection with the education is what I am trying to put forward in a little given time with me. It's a vast subject and I don't know how to squeeze it down. But however, the formal education which my generation has taken, and even yours, everybody in this hall, is all about intellect, how intelligent you are, and how you can show your intelligence. But we as a human being are not just intellect, we are emotional also, and spirituality relates to emotions. So the education which actually was a part of a spirituality has been devoid of the spirituality, has been not been there. If the education happens in these temples, probably the spirituality can be brought back. And with that, the same curriculum can be taught in a very different way. National education policy talks about the multidisciplinary education. And when we talk about multidisciplinary education, at that point of time, a just thought came to me, and I talked to the president of Council of Architecture, that if you identify 10 such architects, gurus, who are gurus, and you give 5 students or 10 students to them, and they teach them the way they want to. Maybe they teach them in a temple also. And they sit there and they teach them, and then at the end of some years, they say these are the objectives they have achieved, so you should be able to give them the degree or the license of architecture. Similar thing could happen to any subject, probably. But Vastu, which is a theory of architecture, which was never taught to us in our 5 years of curriculum. So there is a need to change the entire curricula of architecture. And we were taught climatology. India is a diverse country, and in this diversity, the reflection of climate is seen on architecture. Am I? Okay. I'll come to that. So this diversity of architecture which we see is reflected through architecture. Climate is seen through architecture, and that's why we have diverse architecture from north, south, east, west, and that's reflected in the expression of our temples also. These temples were, only one last point, 2 minutes. There are many things flooding in my mind, but I'll restrict myself to one point, that climatology is just one small part. Vastu Shastra, Sthir Sthapati, and his entire study is inbuilt with the spirituality. That spirituality should come to education. One last controversial example. I am also a town planner, and I believe in the archaeological and conservation systems, which I have learned. In my student is sitting there, she knows about conservation, and this conservation concept is so contrary to the Jirnodhar concept, which is what was shown to us by our Prime Minister Modi ji, that Jirnodhar does not mean conserving the monument as it is. Unless there is an idol in the temple, we do not make a monument a temple. So we are not conserving the monuments, we want to restore the temples. So to restore the temples, Jirnodhar concept given in our agamas should be followed by us, and there are many things in our architecture which we need to study and express through our curriculum, education, and we need to revive those right from the school days to the general education and specifically to architecture education. Thank you so much. I might not have been very clear, I understand, but there are many thoughts coming up, that's why.
Thank you so much, and I'm really sorry that I had to cut short this session, but in the evening we have the governor's address, and since that is very, very strictly mandated that it should start and end on time, we have to work backwards. I cannot take any questions now because the next section is there and the speakers are already in the auditorium, but I am sure that both these learned academicians will be there. Yeah. That is actually a very, very good suggestion. But if you have any questions, I am sure that post this session, and we'll be breaking for lunch, you can always speak to the speakers. Thank you so much for being such patient listeners, and thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for...
Thank you so much for this wonderful session. I request Shefali Vedya to honor our panelists here. May I request you to honor Ujjwala Chakradiyo, Dr. Ujjwala Chakradiyo, and Dr. Shanti Shri Bulupudi. Thank you so much, ma'am. That was an insight into what is in store for us from the great academic institutions. And now we have yet another story, and the storytellers are going to walk us through war stories. Before lunch, it's going to be exciting to listen to the war stories, and may I now request Major Manik M. Jolly, founder CEO of GRID, Grassroots Rural Innovative Development, a consultant, speaker, and trainer with UNIFC, World Bank, and Renewable Energy, here with us, twice decorated military advisor, and he is the founder of a voluntary organization, Dream and Guidance, will now walk us through the war stories. Over to you, gentlemen.
Jai Hind, everyone. And it's been can we say a little louder? Jai Hind, everyone. Thank you. Okay, now we have the two great personalities here whom we always look up in Twitter and social media. A true war correspondent who has been on ground in various conflict reporting. We hardly have very few journals in India doing that. And a very reputed journalist, a staunch nationalist. I have seen him for the years so far. And a journalist who doesn't give away our gun locations. Okay. Okay. And here's my senior. And I have a lot to speak about him. We'll definitely speak about it. Infantarian, a Gorkha by his blood. Spent very valuable time in military intelligence. A pioneer in setting up cyber security or cyber cell in the Indian Army. He was a founder member. Have played a very active role in counterterrorism operation in earlier days of it. It was very tough. What you see today is something different. Has been awarded with Sena Medal, one of the highest gallantry award. From there, he transitioned into corporate, has been a pioneer, a person in solar. He has represented India in various global forums. And he's a key pivotal person whom I would say in changing the rural India. You can visit his LinkedIn profile, you can read about him. A lot he has done, time is short. So now I'll initiate this discussion with a question to both of my panelists. War reporting or war stories, how do we rate ourselves when we compare to movies like Saving Private Ryan, or I would say Hollywood as a benchmark? Over to you, Shiv.
Thank you very much, Major, and privileged to be on this stage, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me. The question you ask is a broad one. It's a difficult one, but I will try and answer it because I actually happen to have some experience in all three of the things that you just mentioned. I don't think India has made a movie yet like Saving Private Ryan. But that I don't think that is the fault of India, because we are equally a war-fighting country. This is a country that has fought 6 major wars. This is a country that famously, and Major Manik will, I'm sure, tell you more about it, doesn't really know the word peacetime. You know, in this country we have gallantry awards that are given away on Republic Day and Independence Day. And many of those awards are peacetime awards, which has always struck the military as weird because there is no peacetime for most of the military. We are constantly in a state of conflict because of our 2 wonderful neighbors. So this is a country that's constantly on its feet, militarily speaking. I've had the privilege of starting as a defense correspondent very young, so I had a chance to cover many conflicts and wars from Sri Lanka to Libya. Last year I spent a month and a half in Israel and Palestine reporting on the conflicts there. Since you mentioned war stories, I'm the author of a series of books called India's Most Fearless, which are basically first-hand accounts of recent military operations. One of the reasons why I decided to write these books is because, and by the way, Chennai is my city. I grew up here, I was born here. This very much is still home for me, even though I've lived many more years outside Chennai. So I feel very much at home here. And I can tell you that growing up in Chennai on Independence Day, thank you, and Republic Day, I'm sure many of you would also see it, that there would be this long list of soldiers, airmen and sailors who would receive these gallantry awards, Shaurya Chakra, Sena Medal, like Major Jolly has got, and various other kinds of decorations for their feats of bravery. And usually in the press release or the newspaper clippings that would come out, there would maybe be a line or two, very rarely a photograph of those military personnel, and that's how it goes, and these stories would just be forgotten. And this always occurred to me as being very, very unfair, because as a defense correspondent, as someone who was covering these stories, covering these operations, I always felt how unfair it was for these people and their families, that the country had no idea about the reality of what they actually did. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to write my book. So that's where war stories comes in. So my book, and I'm not boasting, but my book series was the first that decided to tell first-hand stories. So my books are not based on sources. My books are not based on second-hand information. We cover every operation. It has to be first-hand, which means we report from the army units or from the Air Force squadrons or from the warships, and that's how we've chosen to tell those stories. And we've also decided, and this is something I feel the need to emphasize always, is that people forget that the military is not just about the soldiers, the pilots and the sailors, but it's also about their families, which nobody really ever sees, nobody ever hears about those families. And that's why in my books, in the stories that I've told, I'm only halfway through. It's like this seems like it's going to be a lifelong mission, because I've written 3 books. There are 3 more to come. There probably will be many more after that, because the number of heroes we get in our military is never going to stop. Yeah, that's how I would say it. I think India has a great wartime legacy. There's no shortage of stories to tell. And hopefully at some point in the future, we'll have our own Saving Private Ryan as well.
Thank you, Shiv. And forgot to mention India's Most Fearless, 3 series of books. One of the highest seller, 50,000 plus copies, if I remember, for the first edition. Those who are interested in this, I would say as a nationalist, do read his book. It is very authentic. I've read it, I've gone through it. It gives you a first-hand information. It doesn't have much of masala. Yeah, the books are available outside the stall. Those who want to purchase the hard copy, you can do so. And Manik sir, now the question to you. This is one of your fans from US who wrote a mail to me yesterday night. He wanted me to ask you this question. It says, why army movies are too less, I would say the war movies are too less in efficiency in number, rather thug movies are no less than zillions in both efficiency and numbers. Which movies? Thug movies. Crime movies. So we have the hero does everything, and he flies and he takes bullets, he never dies. So those movies are in zillions and these are in...
Firstly, thanks to the organizers for inviting me here. I started my corporate career in Chennai, though it was only 3 months I stayed here. And it was a conversation on Twitter when somebody asked me, soldiers get a lot of respect in India. Yes, a lot. But I actually wrote in the second line, the amount of love and respect I got in Tamil Nadu and Gujarat, I said I cannot match it anywhere. It was very touching, so it's always nice to come back. And thank you, Shiv, for writing those books. We need people like you to tell our stories. Now, coming back to the question, actually, I think war stories we are not in habit of telling actually, I feel. You know, whenever we read our even historical instances, we have been programmed to receive war stories as such. Islamic invaders came and they ran over India. British came, they fought Palasi, Buxar, and Maratha gone, and British came. We move from milestone to milestone. We are very number based. He had 10,000 soldiers, he has 5,000 soldiers. We do not discuss difficult topics in forums. We don't make movies on ideological issues. And if I honestly feel, if the Kal Chakra is moving and India is again going to become Sone ki Chidiya, our bad time will also come, because if we are not prepared this time. You know, there is only one person, I'll tell you, so we don't, if we make a movie on Shivaji, we will show him as a war leader. We don't show him as somebody who's the only one who understood what ideological war is. We don't teach in our army. We don't, because our two neighbors, you know, are enemies. They are fighting ideological wars. We are fighting military wars. There's a huge difference. When on 14th August, our leaders wish you a happy Independence Day, Pakistan, and may you prosper and all that. Their prosperity in their line is written is Ghazwa-e-Hind. It's eradication of India as it stands. But we still keep wishing them fine. We've always been wanting to good boys. That's our problem. We always believe in Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. And that is the ideology we followed in our war stories also. Even if somebody studied high school history, you ask them who burned Nalanda, you know, people will say Bakhtiar Khilji and all. We never tell them he was bested by some tribesmen in Northeast actually. He died a very desolate, sad death and was assassinated. We tell everyone Ghaznavi came and he routed Somnath temple. We never told actually first time he came, he was sorted out by a Chandela king and he went back and did not come back for many years. Our history runs in a manner, our stories are told in a way that we were just lying there to be picked and kicked around, and anybody who came. First invader was, I think, Muhammad bin Qasim. When he came and was beaten so badly for actually hundreds of years, nobody came. That was the lesson they learned. It took hundreds of years for these guys to, fine, it's like we were a very solid wall. But if you keep knocking against it and keep ramming against it for hundreds of years, it might break down. And nobody can take away the infighting that was happening and all those reasons. So I would say if movies were a depiction of how a country or a society or a nation tells its stories, we are representing how we are. We are very happy with slapstick comedy. We are very happy representing how soldiers are represented. Either they'll always be 10 feet tall, they'll always beat everyone up, they'll drink and sing and dance. I can assure you, whenever we get angry, we don't start singing, you know. Whenever we have a success in military combat, we don't start singing or dancing or we've never done that, right? But there's always a stereotype that is presented how military men are. He'll be a big mustache guy with a cane or a rifle, and he will invariably have a daughter who the hero will quote, and you know, then he will like, I'll kill you, then he'll win him over. It's actually demeaning, you know. It takes away the intellect, the hard work, the physical effort that goes into becoming a military officer. 3-4 lakh people applied, and out of which 200-300 get into NDA, you know. And out of which 10-15% also leave because the training is so tough. After that, you have to 3 years NDA, 1 year IMA, constant training. Then you have to keep passing exams while in service. The movies tend to remove aspect and just focus on he drinks rum, he has a mustache, and he has a dog and a daughter. You know?
And he always wears a uniform, even while coming on.
So I say the story of the normal Bollywood, I've seen like hardly 15 movies in my life. At a very young age, I saw them and I realized this will burn my brain. You know, I never saw them. I hardly see movie. But for whatever I've seen and I see, you know, keep seeing clips, they are okay in producing what is absorbed by audience. If we stop watching that, I think they will also learn a lesson that we need to improve our content. We can't show cartoons as our historical characters and, you know, try to make it best. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll try to play a devil's advocate here. Most of you would be aware there's a controversy which is slightly on now on a movie of Shiva Karthikeyan. The trailer was out. The movie's name is Amaran. It was a biopic of Major Mukund Varadarajan from SS81 from Officer Training Academy, one of the greatest heroes of our times. Shiv is the man behind the movie, and yeah, please. He hasn't advertised it, he hasn't spoken about it, but we all know a lot of hard work has gone in. And the movie, the story crux comes from his book, India's Most Fearless. And because this is the most recent time hero would possibly the 2K kids and the Millennium kids will eventually connect with. I would want to put a question to you. There is already a controversy, but it's done by a fringe group, a communal fringe group. But if you would have definitely seen that movie without disclosing the stories of it. But how close is that movie if I compare with your book? How the current one, Amaran? Yeah.
Can you just clarify which controversy you're talking about? Because last I counted, there were about 8 controversies surrounding the movie.
So there's a protest which happened, I think somewhere in Ramnad or so. They are a group of protesters. We can count them by numbers, I think 8, 10 of them. They got together and they said the Kashmiri Muslims have been portrayed as terrorists and this is not acceptable to us. Ban on movie and so and so.
So the controversy that you refer to is actually the most cartoonish of all the controversies. The other controversies are actually much more serious. So I'm glad you asked me about this one. But if you go onto social media and type Amaran and stuff, I'm sure you will see about the controversies. Many of them are much more serious. But since you mentioned this one, what Major Madan is talking about is that a bunch of people have protested about this movie because the trailer is out. It's a short 2.5-minute teaser trailer that's out. I don't know how many of you may have seen it. It's on YouTube, and it depicts some pretty traditional images that you see as far as a story like this is concerned in Kashmir. You'll see terrorists, you'll see stone pelters, you'll see the army in action, you'll see some death, and nothing out of the ordinary, but really beautifully produced and beautifully shot. Now Siva Karthikeyan plays a guy called Major Mukund Varadarajan, who was decorated posthumously with an Ashoka Chakra for his role. Now, the reason why this particular protest...
Sorry to interrupt. Ashok Chakra is the highest gallantry award given in a peacetime. It's as good as a Paramveer Chakra.
It's equivalent to Paramveer Chakra in peacetime. Again, peacetime, which is a ridiculous word, okay? So the reason why, when I saw, and obviously when this protest happened, people started posting the videos and tagging me. My name was the first to be tagged even before the film producers and stuff. So I was like, I just wrote the book. I'm not making the movie. But anyway, so the reason why that particular protest is so ignorant, ridiculous, and outwardly is because if anyone has read the story of Major Mukund Varadarajan, this should serve as an example of not jumping the gun and making your mind up, because the story of Mukund Varadarajan actually confirms exactly the opposite of what they're saying. It's an amazing story of a young officer, recently married to Indu Rebecca, very much from Tamil Nadu, right? Serving all the way in Shopia in South Kashmir. And he had built a huge, beautiful relationship with many, many villages and villagers who lived in that area. They had a name for him, okay? They called him Khan Sahib. Okay, they had their own local name for him because Major Mukund Varadarajan was too complicated and stuff. So Khan Sahib he was. Okay, and that's actually a name that they gave to many different officers in those areas because it was like term of endearment and respect, and it's amazing because Major Mukund Varadarajan was the guy who would actually go out into these villages and tell them, okay, so your kids have exams over the next 2 weeks. Me and my unit will make sure that nobody comes from the outside and threatens you guys while your kids are having their exams. That's my personal guarantee to you. And that's how he, won the hearts of many of these people. I don't want to spoil the story for you because it's a truly amazing story which you will see in the movie. But these 8 or 9 protesters who said this is branding, people as Muslims as terrorists and stuff like that is absolutely ridiculous. And all of this goes down to the incredibly unfair black and white depictions of the Indian army because of the huge amounts of leftist propaganda that has fed on this idea of the army as a purveyor of human rights abuses in Jammu and Kashmir, which is a ridiculous untruth. I'm a defense correspondent. Whether there is something happening in Kashmir or not, I make it a point even now, and I've been a defense correspondent for 20 years, since August 2004. I make it a point every year to go to Kashmir, whether there's a big story happening there or not, because that is a really special part of the country, and I personally would advise all of you to go there. Since 2019, since the article of abrogation of 370, it's become like any other place, except that it's just really, really beautiful, and the weather is great, and there's a lot to do and stuff. So, but the idea that has been propagated for so long that the army has, been this monster force, occupying force in Kashmir, is complete rubbish when you read stories like those of Major Mukund Varadarajan and many other officers who've, served in Jammu and Kashmir. And I'm sure Major Jolly has also served there, so he knows exactly what it's like. Many young Indians come to me and ask, a question that's commonly asked is, have there been human rights abuses? Now, the one thing I will always say, just to end this thought, is that there are no blacks and whites in conflict. This is not a black and white issue. There are no fierce goods and bads. These are really difficult places where men and women have to take sometimes controversial decisions to perform the larger good, save more lives. Have there been human rights abuses over the years? Some, most certainly not the kind of overwhelming human rights abuses that much of leftist propaganda projects the Indian army as. But I can tell you this very, very clearly. And remember, as a defense correspondent, I am the first one to write negative stories about the army. I may be writing books about army heroes, but I cannot tell you how many times I've been in trouble with the army because I've told things that are not palatable for the army or the air force or the navy. So believe me when I say that I stand right in the middle. I'm not on anybody's side. But having seen how the army is in Kashmir, especially in terms of this whole idea that Kashmiris are painted as communal and this being a Hindu-Muslim issue, there is no the Indian army is not just a military force. It's a very, very moral force. It knows exactly what it's fighting in Kashmir, and that's the reason why they've been there for such a long time now.
Thank you, Shiv. So to add on to what Shiv said, let's look at a very broader perspective. I come from, my native is Dindikal, from Tamil Nadu. My first posting was in line of control in Poonch, and I served with one of our RR regiment. I've been there. Sir is from a different part of the country, so each and every soldier. Soldiers doesn't come from the sky. They are part of our family. They are one among us. They are deputed for a certain operation on a certain duty. It may be peacekeeping. It may be rescuing a child from a borewell, or it may be fighting terrorists at the border. This executive order is given by the government of the day. The armies or the tri-forces are the professional organizations which go and execute it. And in the consequence of the execution, there are certain places where it may go here and there. As Shiv said, it's always cannot be black and white. And we always should see the denominator when we accuse some person, the percentage error or the percentage so-called human rights violations of force which has been deployed since 1990, 30 plus years of counterterrorism operation. Name any force in the world, the US forces in Syria, Iraq, the number of killings, and what happened in Kashmir. A lot of soldiers have laid down their lives because I don't want to reveal the name because it has to come out as a book at some point of time. There are good amount of soldiers who had lost their lives right in front of my eyes because they wanted to save, so-called avoid the collateral damage. Now to Manik sir, one more question to you. We have seen certain movies, the war stories, which used to come earlier, I would say some 10 years before. We saw Dil Se, one of the most popular movie, where there was an army excess and then the character, the lead female character becomes a terrorist. And somewhere in the end of the movie, it is kind of being justified. Some form of she becoming a terrorist is getting justified. And the peak of it, what I saw, like I think when you were a major and I was a lieutenant at that time, was a movie called Shaurya. That completely changed the perspective because that's the first possibly a Hindi war movie I have seen. I had a shock of my life because I just landed up in my unit and I happened to see this movie. And these two movies, Dil Se, most of you would have seen, but the other movie I'm referring to, you can just, I don't want you to actually go see the movie and reignite it, but please do read the story as such. Was that the peak of demonizing the forces, or is it like, is there a new low after that movie?
Okay, one thing I'm at loss. I have not seen either of the movies.
Okay. I think sure.
But I've seen the very famous clip from Shaurya, which you all should see. Actually, it's a courtroom scene in a military court. But one thing I'd like to just add on to what Shiv was saying about being moral. See, we don't grade what we are doing in Kashmir as war. We never say, like he said, we call it peacetime awards. There's no difference in the way, like bullets don't move slow just because it's peacetime, right? So people are fighting. We are a country that is losing soldiers every day. It has become so common that he's been covering defense from 2 decades now, that he would agree with me. Now it becomes just a mention in the newspaper or just, 5 more died, that's it, right? If it was any other country, there would be a lot of hue and cry about it. But we have just normalized it so much because, expendables, soldiers are expendable. They're fighting somewhere. Rest of the country is still fighting. I can tell you if we lose soldiers and a Bollywood actress does something controversial, she will get more media today. It's a fact. The soldiers are so last in the priority list for country. And it's nobody's mistake. It's only government and we have failed to secure the position that they deserved. And it's mainly because also that I would like on that moral thing that when army operates in Kashmir, we are not like US forcing operating in Vietnam. Nobody has bombed, nobody has done napalm bombing. We have never bombed artillery into our own forces or on our own people. We don't even use air force. So if it's a house which has a terrorist hold up, you're not allowed to just burn it down or throw a bomb. Yeah? You have to go soldier by soldier, one by in, and try and kill them, in which you also lose men. And the government and the army both know that. There is no other way to do it. You have to go in one by one. It's a very tedious, risk-taking, and many a times fatal operation. But we fight with our both hands tied behind our backs. That's the morality level of that is inculcated in Indian armed forces. And it comes straight from Ramayana, Mahabharata, and our ideology and our culture. But I would again say we need to revive that. We need to, again I'll go back to Shivaji. He's the guy who understood. Had he not prepared, Afzal Khan would have killed him. But he knew how to fight the man, and he took his Bagnak with him. Just coming back to the movie, I've not seen the both of them. So
I think, Shiv, you can take on that question. I think you got the context of what the movie is face.
Look, I have a slightly contrarian view as far as films are concerned. But, my view is that, look, the Indian film industry gets a lot of flack, which is fair in my view. But let's never forget that the Indian film industry, Bollywood, whatever you want to call it, is a very, very, very important part of India's soft power.
Yeah.
Okay, we can sit here and crib about the movies, and believe me, I'm completely with you as far as how the military is depicted. Whether it is Shaurya, they'll say any other movie, it grates for me as well. But that's okay. I mean, I think it's okay to have judge a movie on issues of taste and accuracy and things like that. And I think it's totally warranted and natural, especially for military personnel, to watch the quality of movies and think, oh my God, why can't they get this right? This doesn't happen in the movie. You're absolutely right. We don't sing when we're at war, and all those things I think are issues of taste, issues of that sort of thing. I think there are some fine examples of how the military has been depicted in movies. It is going to be a very tall order, in my view, to have a pure war movie in this country
we need that masala
without the songs and dances and emotions and romance and stuff. It's going to be very difficult. Like, for example, I'll take a small example of a war movie that is very little war and mostly like relationship romance, but I happen to think it's a fabulous movie which actually depicts the movie in beautiful light, and that is Lakshya. Okay, with Hrithik Roshan. Total pop, romance, Farhan Akhtar type movie. Nothing serious about it. But that movie had a real effect on me. I was in college when I watched that movie, and that even though there was no part of me that ever wanted to get into the military for some reason, but when I watched that movie, and I remember being in a hall full of people who were so impressed by that movie. And 75% of that movie is not military stuff.
Yeah.
It's Hrithik Roshan in college and ragging and all sorts of rubbish. But the movie is a military movie, and so I think it goes down to that. About it could be about taste, etc.
Yeah, but the level of masala, which the ad, of course, it has to be commercial. It has to earn money.
Look,
for them.
I'll tell. See, the thing is, one has to be a little bit empathetic also to film producers and filmmakers, which is that a war movie or a military movie can't be wholly military, because ultimately a film has to be watched by.
Okay, I'll slightly put it to a.
I have a quick point to that. I understand you can't, we don't show hardcore military ops, and I don't know, we don't want to show, or there's a lack of intent or capability. But let's say small things like when I had just joined Twitter in 2019. I had a stroke. I was hospitalized for almost a year. That is the time I started Twitter, right? So I had 200 followers, right? Nobody. So Sam Manekshaw first poster came out 2020, and they had his dress wrong, As a Gorkha officer, he was wearing golden badge. So when I wrote a comment on that, obviously I hardly had any followers, and I was nobody for them. They corrected it after a while. But this is my point. You're making movie on a field marshal, one of the legends of Indian military. You can't get his dress right. And recently, now that I had a lot of followers, Akshay Kumar was making a movie on Gorkha. I'm from Gorkha Regiment. I was commissioned into it. And he had a soldier and a kukri, like a angry-looking young man kind of thing. So they got the kukri wrong. They showed the sword. Kukri is the identity of Gorkha soldier. I have it tattooed here, So it is, and you got a kukri wrong. It is. So I wrote that, dear Mr. Akshay Kumar, thanks for making movie, but your kukri is wrong. It's a sword. He replied to that, yeah, thank you, Major, we'll change it and all that. The movie didn't come out. That they had some problem with the army headquarters. But what I'm trying to say is, they can get basics wrong. In Hollywood movies, I watch a lot of them. It's not about snobbery, I just like how they make war movies, right? Even if it's a romance movie and the soldier is the hero, and they show him coming down from a helicopter, jumping and running towards his girlfriend and all that. It's a 5-second clip. But you pause that scene and watch where the guns, where the soldier, where the guard, the uniform, the collar tabs, everything will be the way it will be on a military base. That is the detailing. That is why they are Hollywood, and we are great, but
You know, I completely agree with Major Jolly when he says that, if filmmakers decide to make films about the military, they have to understand that, you can't take liberty with certain things. You can't mess up uniforms, you can't mess up, regimental insignias, you can't mess up, certainly you can't mess up names, the way the military does things, because, as civilians, we have to understand that military culture is a completely different kind of civilizational, thought. Accuracy, regimentation, not getting those small things wrong is part of how they function. So when they see, outsiders just having their way with, acha chalo, if you don't have the Gorkha insignia, just put something else. You don't have a kukri, just use a sword. For the Gorkha regiment, taking away the kukri and putting a sword is like probably going up to the colonel commandant and slapping him. It's sacrilege. It's like slapping that person's parent. It's unacceptable. So I completely agree with you. If you're going to delve into making military movies, the least that you owe to your audiences and to the military is depiction of accuracy. Just one small addition to this. One of the reasons why American films and military films have always had default accuracy as far as the military is concerned is because post-Vietnam, the American military had already realized the benefits of engaging with Hollywood and media. They saw Hollywood as a fabulous, game-changing sort of propaganda platform, which is why whether it's the US Navy or the Marine Corps or the US Army or the US Air Force, when Hollywood movies are made, they provide real assets. They provide active consultancy. Unlike the Indian military, which has only now started to do it.
Yeah.
The Indian military was suspicious of filmmakers. They didn't like people coming into their academies and shooting their regiments and their bases. They hated that. Even now, it's like a pretty strict process to get permission to shoot or film at bases. But all I'm saying is, in the US, whether it's like a bubblegum romance or whatever it is, the military was, sure, please come in and we'll tell you exactly how to do. We'll give you the uniforms, we'll give you the helicopters, we'll have consultants on board. So, absolutely.
Yeah.
And with Amaran, for instance, I can assure you that there will be no inaccuracies because me and my co-author are on board, and we will make sure there are no errors as far as the military is concerned.
Thanks, Shiv. So to add on to what Shiv has said, ADGPA is an institution of Army which kind of controls all this media. Anybody who would want to do a movie or a OTT, they go and apply. And a week before when I spoke to somebody in ADGPA, they said 28 movies are currently in pipeline. So we see a major surge, I think, in the past 2-3 years. So I think post-COVID, we are seeing a major surge. Yeah, of course, we understand that it cannot be completely the way we see things, be it the uniform or be it the mannerism or the kind of the dialogues they deliver. But certain movies have been purely meant for propaganda. I would say, for example, Salman Khan's movie. I have not watched the movie, with a disclaimer, I don't watch his movies. But there was a movie where he is a RNAW agent, raw agent, and then his girlfriend, she is an ISI agent, and then he addresses to his teammates, his fellow raw officials, "Aapki bhabhi kaise hain?" Bhabhi, and there's so much of romancing, and then the Indian raw agent and the Pakistani ISI agent go together and do some rescue in Syria, and
Tiger Zinda hai.
Tiger Zinda hai. I really got angry. I haven't seen that movie. I heard the storyline. I will not do the mistake of reading that. Why? Because exactly a week before, in my own YouTube channel, I took a month's time to read about Ravinder Kaushik, who's the actual tiger. If anybody wants to know what guts mean, what sacrifice mean, do go and read his history. Ravinder Kaushik was named tiger by none other than then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. Yeah, one of the legend. His story, you can add masala, but there is a limit to add masala, and what kind of masala do you add? But and surprisingly, I think so that movie was a hit. Yeah, huge hit. Now, if I want to go back to those kids or the younger generation who has seen those movies, even the elders, I would say, no, Ravinder Kaushik was not this. He was something else. We have to make five more movies. Your views on it, sir?
So I'd say on this, same thing. Charity begins at home. If you have I don't have kids. I have a niece who's now growing up. She's 4 years old, right? So if I tell her whole day you keep making TikToks and I clap and go watch another movie and see Tiger Zinda hai or Alive or Dead, go check it out. I can't blame anybody else for not making sure that she doesn't know who Maharana Pratap was. If you are in your house, and that is the aspect of war storytelling I was telling you, don't, we can't, it's not a binary situation where either you know everything about history or you are only Tigers in the high quality, It has to be somewhere where we can tell our children, just remember there was a Maharana Pratap. Just remember there was a Shivaji. As you grow up, learn more about him. When you have to give anecdotes, when you have to give examples, when you have to give names, quote these names. So you want to learn character, learn from Karan or Arjun or Sri Ram or whatever. This is, so I don't know much about movies, but this is the aspect of war storytelling. If you want to teach somebody, I can tell you it can be a 3 to 4 hour session if you just start talking about Abhimanyu and Chakravyuh, right? It'll bring tears to your eyes if you read about how he was killed and that aspect of it. I still get goosebumps when I think of it, right? Phenomenal story. But that we always sit on, there are a lot of panels I speak, there are a lot of places we speak, we always have this, society has this, country has this, nation has all this. Just go and check what is in our homes actually, that'll be more than enough. So as far as this simplification of a raw agent falling in love with ISI agent, I think it's one, Bollywood is just riding the nationalist wave right now. The OTT and Bollywood both are understanding there's BJP आ गया है और nationalist wave चल रहा है, बनाओ movie पे movie.
Right on it.
Yeah, चलेगा, ये भी this will work, कोई तो चलेगा, it is like that. Doesn't matter. There's a very famous picture, Shiv, you would have seen, there's a lady officer who's wearing military corps epaulets and para commando and this and that.
Everything is.
Yeah, and every soldier is confused. Who is she?
Which regiment is she?
Who is she? So that's the thing. Bollywood is just making most of the vibe. That's a
Thank you, sir. And every good thing has to come to end. 2 short questions from the audience. 2 questions. Time is up. Okay.
So, the US Army
Question
Chief's
2?
office has...
Question 2?
To either, to all, actually all 3.
Okay.
Perhaps more towards the Shiv. So, the US Army Chief's office has a professional reading list that they come out with, I think, almost every year. And these are a very diverse set of books from ancient Greek wars to modern information warfare. 2 questions here. The first one is that, are you aware of whether the Indian armed forces have anything similar? And if not, would you be willing to put together a list and maybe share it on your Twitter channel?
The Indian armed forces do have reading lists, by the way. As far as their progressive courses and stuff, they do have reading lists for sure. It's a good question because nobody's actually ever seen these lists. But these are lists that are part of the periodical courses that officers go through. In academies, exactly. I personally would love to put together a list, but I don't think I would ever put myself in a position where I think I have the kind of wisdom and scope to advise officers. I'm a ordinary civilian. Officers who go into these courses are learning not just about tactics and things, but strategy and warcraft and things like that, which is way beyond anything I could advise them about. So honored that you think I could do that, but no.
So the moment we join academy, every term you have to read 1 book. These books are prescribed by RTRAC, the Army Training Command. And as we keep progressing, it is also when you join unit, one of the first tasks you get is your boss will tell you, and it's like a culture that you write a book review every 3 months. And in our promotion exams, there is a major campaign let's say you will do, an in India Maratha campaign or outside Battle of Somme or something like that. And one general that you have to study about to pass that exam. We even study Nazi generals and all, because it's purely from a military perspective. So there is no centralized list, but the training command has put down generals and campaigns that we go through in our lifetime to, understand more about it.
One last question.
Hello. I always expected the army and I get goosebumps. I always wanted to be part of the army and respect the army people a lot. Can there be anything which I can do? I always wanted to be part of the army and respect the people a lot. I want to contribute something to the army people a lot.
He wants to contribute to the army in any way that is possible.
I got that.
He wants to contribute to the army in any way that is possible. He has an immense respect for the army. Yeah.
I always get inspired by the army people.
He is always inspired by the work that people do in the armed forces. And
I will definitely talk to you after this. Whatever you are doing, I will talk to, there's OTA in Chennai, there are NCC nearby, there are a couple of, we'll definitely figure out something.
I carry forward this commitment from my sir. We will soon have you in one of official military event. I commit you this on behalf of Major Sir. And Shiv, your perspective?
The military, like our society, has changed amazingly over the last 20 years, and I am personally witness to that. And I think the military has been extremely open. I am actually a sort of living example of how the military has changed. The military hates giving journalists access to official records and war reports and military operations reports, but they completely opened their doors to me. And I have spent my entire career writing negative stories about the army, but they trusted me with that. So absolutely, anything you think you can do for the military will listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you so much. I hope this session gave you something, and we also took something from here. And one thing which, as a forum, I would like to tell the journalists out here, there is a course which has been initiated by the Government of India. It's called Defense Correspondence Course. It's a 1 month course, right? It's I think 1 or 2 months course. Tamil Nadu gets 3 vacancy. Each state gets 3 vacancy. One of you can, who are interested, I can be the messenger to pass it on to them. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for this wonderful insight into the war stories, and we feel really privileged to hear from the first-hand source on the war stories. May I now request Sri Srinath ji to honor Major Madan and Dr. Ujjwala to honor Major Manik. Sri Srinath ji honoring Major Madan, Dr. Ujjwala to honor Major Manik Joli. And I request Dr. Shanti Shri Pandit ji to honor Shiv Arur. Ma'am, please come to the center of the dais. Srinath ji.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just taking one moment to acknowledge the presence of Sri Kalyan Raman ji, who has come and graced this occasion. He is Prabhari of Intellectual Wing, BJP State Party. Sir, welcome, sir. We are very happy to have you here, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have quite a good number of interesting sessions post-lunch. And at sharp 2, we have a session curated by Shefali Vaidya with Vivek Agnihotri. So please run, grab your plates, have your food and come back and be seated by 155. So
turn to you first. Under the leadership of the Prime Minister and your efforts to break stereotypes, to lead major government missions under your ministry, investing in women's empowerment, investing in adolescent girls, and in India is articulating a paradigm shift towards women-led development. There's legislative representation at local levels and Parliament coming. And we've seen at the international stage, India's presidency of the G20, for example, this shining through. And in fact, if not mistaken, just last month at the World Economic Forum, you announced a new alliance for global good, gender equity and equality. So I wonder, Minister, if you could please share with us why and how has women-led development become such a priority for India's policy making domestically and on the international stage?
I think, Shambi, what is important is to reflect on the journey thus far. For too long, the agenda of women was differentiated upon and limited to a silo of policymakers, as though only a specific department, a specific desk is to look at the ease of living for women, the opportunities for women, the ambitions of women. The narrative was so distinct that women, very coyly so, allowed the use of the word aspiration and not the word ambition, so that no one feels threatened. I also feel that what has helped the cause of women, and I use that word judiciously, is the fact that we have a man at the helm now who not only talks about equality, but delivers it. In 2014, when Prime Minister Modi came to office, what was the legacy that he had inherited from a female point of view? 110 million families and women in them did not have an individual household toilets. Girls were dropping out because they did not have access to menstrual hygiene products or did not have a separate toilet in their school. 10 years ago, issues like cancer of the breast were not openly discussed because somebody presumed that it is not to be culturally as a part of conversations in everyday family life or administrative life, meant to be propagated or meant to find a solution which was holistic in nature and was not in any way not responding to the diversity of our demography. What Prime Minister Modi inherited is a 4-decade-old lag in issues of nutrition for women and children. What Prime Minister Modi inherited was a legacy where women, particularly, and their security, did not have an emergency response service in India. Now, in the past decade, he has delivered on all those fronts. For the first time in every police station in our country, there is a women's help desk. In every district of my country, there is an anti-human trafficking unit. In every district of our country, we have a one-stop service center where we ensure that women get help from medical personnel, from police, from lawyers. Free aid is given, a short stay home is made, working women hostels are made, homes for destitute women are made. 35 million pregnant women got a cash transfer into their bank accounts so that they could get vaccinated and they could have an institutional engagement for delivery of the child. We created a platform which serviced 1.4 million nutrition centers through 2.2 million workers and helping 100 million beneficiaries, of which 75 million are children below the age of 6, 25 million are lactating mothers, And every month in our country, those 75 million children get measured as per World Health Organization standards. We run the largest nutrition program in the world. What Prime Minister Modi also runs is the largest health program in the world. We all know with our experience, especially in gender, that when there is a capital crunch in a community or there's a capital crunch in a family, the woman's health becomes a non-starter issue. Women tend to either not medicate or self-medicate because they have constrained resources. Prime Minister Modi has created Ayushman Bharat, which now services 100 million families, in which there are close to 500 million citizens, 27,000 hospitals across the country, 1,900 diseases. And what is the outcome? 2014, before that, cancer of the breast, in terms of even testing for it, let alone treating it, was not a public agenda of conversation. In the past just 5 years, we have seen that over 200 million women have had themselves screened, have had footfalls in wellness centers across the country, which means Prime Minister Modi has, in his efforts, prioritized women's health. I had the privilege of serving as Minister of Education under his leadership. Our national education policy was not revised for the past 3 decades. And now that we have a new education policy for the first time in independent India, we have a gender inclusion fund which funds infrastructure for women. What is the impact? We have 263 million kids in our K-12 systems. But Prime Minister Modi also ensured that movement of credit, especially for women who want to pursue higher education, is facilitated, because most women, either in their journey of academics, were moving from one state or one city to another, or when they got married, were moving from one city to another. Because he made the credit system movable across the country, the number of women doing PhD in India has gone up by 99%. Now, I'm not even counting the fact that 43% of the STEM graduates in India are now women. I'm not even counting the fact that most of the frontline agenda work of ISRO, our space program, is led by women. I'm not saying that it is enough that I celebrate that for the first time defense schools have females enrolled into it. But what I'm extremely proud of is also that the Permanent Commission for Women in the Indian Armed Forces was given by Prime Minister Modi. Now, while those are big ticket items, Shambi, I think the details to which he has gone. India never had a menstrual hygiene program to look at menstrual hygiene waste. Prime Minister Modi even applied himself to that problem, so that aspects of menstrual hygiene are also looked into at the detail, at the ground, at the grassroots by administration. And yes, he becomes the first Prime Minister who, from the ramparts of the Red Fort, spoke about the availability of a sanitary pad at 1 rupee. Now, for a man in office to change that narrative, but also implement that policy, our appeal as his cabinet colleagues was, can we internationalize his efforts? And that is when India received the presidency of the G20, I'm extremely elated that he brought the women's agenda to the main table. We all know before that, civil society used to discuss the female agenda in W20. It never found a voice at the main table. He has now institutionalized that voice in G20. And I think that's India's message to the world, that if you're thinking of a future, you can't think of it without women and girls having an equal seat at that global table.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Minister Irani. So I think just carrying to the right here now, if I may, Ms. Rayner, your road to the top has been an inspiring one. I mean, you have quite an inspiring life journey, beginning as a former care worker, working your way to the senior leadership positions and in political positions. You've been outspoken on tackling the gender pay gap and strengthening workplace protections. for new parents. So if I could ask you, why is it so important that we have policies to close the pay gap? How can we get to where we need to be in terms of equal pay for equal work, and as well as, for example, care work, accurately reflecting and remunerating and fairly distributing that care work, as we see care work will only continue to grow in the future workforce. Please, Ms. Rain.
Okay, thank you. And it's a pleasure to share a seat on this panel with the fellow panellists, and it's inspiring to see what the Minister has achieved and what their government is achieving, and I hope to one day be able to repay what others have done for me, because the truth is, without everyone in this room are allies because you chose to come to this event. So that's important. But it's also important that what you do outside of this room to bring the people who didn't choose to come to this event into the conversation. Because to me, it's not just about the journey and what that does in terms of an individual, giving them their full opportunity to reach their full potential, but it's very damaging to your economy if you don't fulfil women's full potential. It is an economic argument as much as a social argument in terms of what we're able to achieve. And everything that people do, whether it's my mum who was born in a very poor area in Greater Manchester, who was illiterate, couldn't read or write and had serious mental health problems, her potential was never captured and she wasn't given those opportunities. But skip a generation to me, who was born in very similar circumstances to my mum, and then I had some great opportunities because the state and others invested in me and gave me chances. Now, I used to be very frustrated by the feminist movement. I didn't class myself as a feminist. I thought, well, what does that mean to me? And I didn't understand the academic argument for it. But in the years that I've been involved in policy making and pushing my way to the front, elbowing my way forward, I've realised that one of the crucial things you need to do is you need to legislate. You need to have the hard tools, and you also need the allies to make sure it's implemented and it happens. Now, we've done that in the UK. We've had legislation. We've now got 50% of parliamentarians are women through the Equalities Act, the legislation we brought forward. I battled in the workplace for equal pay. We delivered equal pay for women in the workplace, but we start to slip back. We've got laws in the UK that prohibit unequal treatment, that have employment rights for people, that are anti-discrimination, but far too often it happens, and it still happens, and enforcement of those rights, and that continual pressure to make sure that you get there. So I'm all for targets. I think you've got to keep them. I think it's a continuation. You can't think, okay, we've done that, tick that box, it's done, because it will slip backwards. And we've got to continually do that until we can change the culture. The UK, you know, my grandma, and the way it was for my grandma was very different to how it is for me. But we're on a journey, and we have to keep continuing to make sure we reach that potential. Because we've seen it in policy, we see it with members of parliament in the UK, that so often it's the women that raise issues that are considered women's issues. And it's so crucial that a professor once said to me, Angela, like recruits like. So if those people aren't in positions of power, then women won't see themselves as powerful, and they won't see themselves as CEOs of companies. They won't see themselves as doctors. They won't see themselves as prime ministers of a country if they can't see those people in those positions. So we've got to, first of all, make sure we have those hard targets, in my opinion, to make sure that happens. And we've also got to make sure that we have the allies. So my challenge to you, because I always think sitting in a room is interesting and we can have the chat, but my challenge to you is to, when you leave this room today and you've listened to the women on this panel, you need to do one thing of encouragement. What can you do in your sphere of influence to either speak to another delegate about what you've heard today, or what can you do back in your workplace or in your society, in your community, to make that change and to pat the girl on the shoulder and say, hey, you should do this because you're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rayner. Very, very powerful. And now, if I may turn to you, Dr. Alakija. You are obviously very well known internationally, more recently in the area of access to public health and vaccines, the COVID pandemic and such. But you were sharing before that this title, Chaturanga, means a lot to you, and the title of this session means a lot to you. That from the age of 14 you were already engaged in organizing girls' clubs and bringing leadership opportunities to young girls. I wonder if you could share your personal journey and professional journey and how that links to the title of this session.
Thank you so much, Shombi, and I want to thank Samir and the ORF for having us all here today. When he reached out to me about this session, I said that literally I could possibly write a book, many of us could, on the title of the session, From Boardroom to Global Institution. But the shame of the matter is that there are too few of us who are in the boardroom and who are heading to global institutions. And as we're here today having this conversation, really honored to be here with Minister Irani, Angela and the other friends. It is very notable that there are far fewer people in this room now than there were a few hours ago. It is very notable that this topic of conversation is really considered a sort of a fringe, a sort of frivolity for many people, and they're not actually engaged in it. We talk very much about inclusion, but what really is happening in the area of women and gender, and I also try to avoid sort of women-specific conversations because I talk about us all being human. I do the same when we start to talk about things to do with race, and I say we shouldn't segregate one another, but sometimes you have to come together as powerful women that we are, as wonderful, as beautiful, as great as we all are on this panel, and we have to tell the world the truth, and we have to tell it the way it is. For me, my journey from the age of 14 was starting a little club in Ibadan, Nigeria, called the Golden Z Club, which was for disadvantaged girls. I didn't even know what I was doing, but I just knew that life had to be better. It had to be better for everybody. I was relatively privileged. I also grew up, my grandmother was the one who was illiterate. My grandmother was a single mother. She had 3 husbands and a situation because she said thank you next to the men who didn't understand that she was not about to be downtrodden and treated like a little woman in the village. She was a trader. She built the first house in her city, and she was fiery. And I guess there was a little bit of that in me, and I'm an only child of a man who was told that he should go and find another wife because this wife wouldn't give him sons, and he would say that this girl will be more than 10 men. And, for me, that was what inspired a lot of confidence in me. And as I have grown through my career, I'm a medical doctor. He sent me off to boarding school in England. He used all of his money to buy my very expensive voice. Because he felt that it would put me at the top of wherever I needed to go in life, and it really has done, because it opens doors that are unbelievable. But even with those doors being open, because I'm a woman, you find that you walk into a door that very quickly you have to work twice as hard, you have to be twice as good, you have to be twice as everything to get half of where a man in your stead would get. God give us the mediocrity of a man from the global north. It's a really, really wonderful privilege. We women have to work so incredibly hard to get half into the steps of where men will get to. So, getting from boardroom to global institution is about, we talk about inclusion, but we have to remember that what it is that women have been excluded deliberately, systematically. We've been excluded by culture, by tradition, by fragile egos, and we continue to be excluded. There is a tokenistic representation that we see nowadays where we see nowadays when certain men are put into certain positions and they say, oh, let's have a woman. Let's have a woman, but let's relegate her to the back. So we put women in positions when it is time for failure, when an institution has gotten to its not about to make it point. And let's talk about the UN. Now we're talking, sorry, Shombi. Now we're talking about the UN. You know, the whole world is now saying it's time for a UN Secretary General that's a woman. Why have we not had in the past 70-something years a Secretary General that is a woman? It is not that we have not had women that are qualified. It is that the world does not consider that we as women, because God forbid that we get pregnant and have to have maternity leave. God forbid that we have a period and are emotional one day. I mean, can you imagine? We could start a war. I mean, which man hasn't done that? These are the issues around exclusion, and I want to go back to health, which you referred to at the very beginning. I have, in recent years, been the WHO the Special Envoy and the co-chair of the Access to COVID Tools Accelerator, and it blew my mind. It blew my mind at the beginning of COVID, sort of when vaccines were first emerging, that the world neglected to do clinical trials for pregnant women and lactating mothers. Do you know the millions of women that we lost? Why? It wasn't out of malice. It was out of we did not think about it. They did not think about it because the people in positions of authority, the men in charge of global health, the men in charge of pharma companies, they were men. So they didn't think that, oh my goodness, women are going to be pregnant through this pandemic, we need to trial this. Inclusion and going from that boardroom into a global institution, it's not just because it's nice to have, it's not just because we're fabulous and we look good, it's because it is necessary for humanity, it is necessary for the economic growth of a nation. Minister Irani just told us, the world talks all the time about the incredible job that India is doing in terms of development and growth, but those statistics she just gave you are the reason why. You know, and I think that in many ways we all do you a disservice, and perhaps you do yourselves a disservice by not quoting those statistics first, because it tells the bigger story. The focus on, and I would also say the Prime Minister Modi, perhaps, because, may her memory be blessed, obviously had a strong mother. He had a strong mother, and that woman in his life, as we all saw the honor and the duty that he gave towards her in those last hours of her life, that is why you now have somebody who focuses on women in your country. I will stop there for now, but my journey, look, it's been hard won and hard fought, and it continues to be hard. It continues to be hard because I say to all the young people and all the young fellows, we have Nigeria fellows here, we have the Racina fellows, my message to all of the young ones, particularly the girls, I have a daughter that I call Princess President because I want to remind her that she's a princess and she's also a president in waiting. But my message to all of them is that I want my ceiling to become your floor, because we cannot keep on going like this. We will not get to the SDGs if we do not refocus on women. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lakija. And I'm just minded the male fragility bit, probably many have seen that movie Barbie, and I'm reminded of this, I'm Just Ken, the song, how do we deal with that male fragility as part of the story. But turning now to Ms. Springer. I think it was Bob Hope once said that a bank finance, that's a place they'll lend you money only if you can prove that you don't need it. But now you're engaged in a different kind of venture capital. You're into deep tech, national security, and venture capital. So a leader in quite a different sphere. Could you share with us perhaps how do the issues of gender equality or lack of equality affect your business and your role within that business and your colleagues?
Well, deep tech, national security, venture capital, I assumed we had solved it, so I'm not sure why I'm on this panel. No, it's a tremendous hurdle. I am frequently the only woman in the room, but it remains to me a mystery why we perceive women in policy, women in academia, women in business to be anathema to great outcomes, because we have the data to support it. We have data that shows that diverse perspectives in a room drive alpha. And I'll share a framework that we use internally at my firm, which is that we look at supervision and we look at anti-vision. Supervision is the ability to see what other people are not yet seeing. Anti-vision is the ability to see what is impossible, right? People didn't fly until we flew. People didn't go to the moon until we went to the moon. The things that these have in common is that they depend on different perspectives, different lived experiences, different day-to-day interactions, different problem sets that need to be solved. The person sitting in my seat, regardless of gender, is seeking alpha, right? Some sort of asymmetric advantage in either the financial setup of something or the moat that's going to be created by tackling a new market or bringing a new idea to bear fruit. I look for the people who are at the outlier, right? The bell curve, I don't want the middle. I'm looking for the people who have the supervision and the anti-vision. And that comes with that different experience, which is why I can't believe that we're still having this conversation, because the data shows over and over that women in the room lead to better outcomes. About 5% of venture firms in the US are led by women. 69% of venture firms in the top quartile have a female decision maker in the room. So when we talk about how to pursue better outcomes, and when we talk about how to capture better alpha, capture better ideas, capture better voices in the room, I can't believe we're still having this conversation, but we are. And women need to be included in a much more deliberate and thoughtful way.
Thank you so much. And I'm just reminded of the basic economic concept of marginal products. In any sort of model, you have different inputs, and if we consider gender as one of those factors, that if you have only men in a leadership panel or something like that, the value of each one individually is quite low. So getting, gender equality is also about just getting to a point where we have equal marginal product. But so far, as you're mentioning, the value of women is incredibly high because we lack that parity. And I would like to also just mention, I would just like to note that the Secretary General did mandate absolute parity among leadership in the UN system. So the resident coordinators, for example, and all senior leadership are at, in a way, perfect parity outside of the Secretary General himself. So thank you, Ms. Springer. Turning to Ms. Bhatti, if I could note that Bangladesh has made quite remarkable progress in gender equality in the last 20 years. Maternal mortality rates have dropped considerably. Women's labor force participation rates have gone up quite a lot, education and more. Could you share some thoughts on that journey, how Bangladesh has achieved this and what challenges still remain?
Thank you, Shambi. I was listening the ministers and I found it like, oh my God, I'm sitting with them and talking about women's rights. It's already achieved. It's here. Let me actually give some context in Bangladesh. First, I'll take you to the Constitution of Bangladesh. The Constitution of Bangladesh forms the basis of women's rights. Article 19, Section 1 of the Constitution guarantees equal opportunities for all citizens. Article 28, Section 1 prohibits discriminatory behavior based on religion, race, caste, place of birth, and gender. Article 28, Section 4 stipulates making special provisions for women as less advantaged section of the society. To uphold the constitutional right, we need supportive policies from the government. So under the leadership of the government, Sheikh Hasina has greatly emphasized on women political, economic and social empowerment in the Perspective Plan 2021-2041, 8 5-year plans 2020-2025, and the National Women Development Policy 2011. Furthermore, the government has implemented many action plans adroitly to achieve sustainable development goals relating to women empowerment and gender parity. The 8 5-year plan expects that men and women will get equal rights and opportunities, and women will be recognized as equal contributors to economic, social, and political development. Success in establishing women's advancement, participation of women has increased in the labor market. Their participation has greatly contributed to sustained economic growth, as you said. The recently published Workforce Census 2022 reveals the country's workforce is 7.3 crore, of which women are 2.59 crore. The number of primary school-going children has increased 1.70 crore, of whom 49.4% are girls. The introductions of stipends and school feeding program has increased enrollment in primary education. 1.30 crore students are being provided with stipends sent directly to their mother's account through MFI, which has paved the way of enhancing women's social dignity. The government has established one community clinic for every 6,000 people. So far, 14,878 community clinics have been established, and 80% of service seekers in these clinics are women and children, and 80% service givers are women as well. So Bangladesh has made commendable progress in women empowerment. Political Parties Registration Act 2020 stipulates that each party must ensure 33% of women's representation in all its committees. Unfortunately, this is far to achieve because there are lots of political parties, especially based on religion. They thought women leadership is haram or forbidden. So let's talk about some bottlenecks. Even today, in the modern developed world, parents still prefer having a boy over a girl. One long-standing reason boys have been seen as a greater blessing in that they are expected to become better economic providers during their parents' old age. However, it is time for parents to think that girls may be the better investment. According to the census, there are almost 50% of women and men in Bangladesh. Almost 100% girls are enrolled in primary schools, but 51% get married under the age of 18. Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics says the average age for marriage is 19. Then the girls disappear from education, training, and jobs. They are not on any list. They become silent workers of household chores and care work. There is no access and control over resources as they are not involved in income-generating activities. Inheritance law and practice do not let women get their fair share. So many women still need to be added to active participation in the economic sphere and at different stages. I can give you an example. The social perception of women as less capable in STEM fields, coupled with structural challenges such as safety concerns and harassment, forms a formidable barrier. Their issues prevail in urban and rural landscapes, affecting women's abilities to remain in these crucial sectors. This disparity in tertiary education enrollment, particularly in STEM fields, highlights a significant gap that Bangladesh must address.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Bhatti. And now, I had really originally ambitions of a second round, but I think just so that we can at least have a couple of questions, maybe we can just take a couple of questions. I think we have the, someone is organizing up there. Perhaps we could just say take three, and then I want to give each of the panelists, opportunity either to respond to one or just last comments. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much to the panel for your lovely contributions. My name is Danielle Alakija, founder and CEO of the Soli Group, and most importantly, daughter of Dr. Alakija. So I am the aforementioned Princess President. There's a long and storied history of women not receiving credit for their achievements and their contributions to society. So I don't actually have a question. I just want to say thank you to my mom. You can see the resemblance now, we're both crying. She has been such a light in my life for the last 27 years. Just to age her a little bit for you as well, that's how old I am. So I just want to say thank you in front of everybody here, everybody online, all of the young fellows who I did actually promise you to this evening, so you've got a lot of questions to answer later. And of course, thank you as well to the incredible panelists for everything you've done for women across the world.
Thank you, Daniela. And I guess that's a comment and inspiration to everybody's mothers as well. But second question?
Hello, I don't know how to ask question after this. I am Nare, I am from Armenia. Shombi, hello here. Armenia misses you. And I just wanted to, my question is to Minister Irani. Firstly, I want to say that you have been the only person who remembered all the statistics without reading it. I don't think any man has done it here. Thank you for that. And I have a question to you specifically about, you mentioned like women's role in the education, defense, etc. I want to know if they are paid equally to men or more. I'm not going to ask too less. And also, I would like to know the rate of abortion. I think you did not mention it, when people find out the baby is a girl after doing a gender reveal. Thank you.
Good evening.
Yes, let's take, here, right, please.
My name is Ananya Tomar, and I am a student at Lady Shri Ram College for Women. And my question is open to all the panelists. So there's several barriers to women's participation in peace building. Women are often stereotyped as nurturing and naturally skilled at communication. So when can we expect these stereotypes to be overcome and for women's full potential in peace building to be recognized, allowing them to overcome barriers and contribute their diverse skills and perspectives to the process? Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Balali.
Okay, last question, and then we'll have to come back to the panelists.
I'm part of the Nigeria-India Bridge. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm a documentary filmmaker and a political commentator in Nigeria. And I have a question for the Minister for India. Nigeria and India shares very similar traits, and we know that when it comes to culture and tradition, that this often is a barrier for advocating and advancing women's rights. So I'm very curious to find out some tactics and what roles and what ways were you able to, address the fact that culture and tradition often plays a role in preventing from the rights for women. And if you could just share that with us. Thank you.
Right.
So if I'm to answer first, the lady who asked me a question about abortions, given that, and especially female infanticide, Prime Minister Modi started a program called Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, which particularly ensured that law enforcement agencies, along with our medical community, specially ensures that the fetus's sex is not identified so that this practice can be nipped in the bud. Whoever then still violates the law is prosecuted and, in fact, after a judicial indictment, jailed. 2 years ago, the number was 600 in a country of 1.4 billion. But we are wanting to ensure that not one such child is killed in the womb. However, Prime Minister Modi was very conscientious enough to recognize that there have been women who've had medical challenges with regards to their pregnancies beyond a trimester, which was allowed under the law, recognizing the changing medical landscape. In the 1960s, there was a conversation whether women at 24 weeks can be allowed medical termination of their pregnancies under law. Prime Minister Modi brought that bill to Parliament. In both houses of Parliament, it passed unanimously, and not a man in the country said a word. Insofar as the bridge between India and Africa and how can we culturally contextualize solutions, I think I'll take a leaf from Gyode. The next UN General Secretary General should be, I'm not pointing at you, but Shambe, you may want to consider, if you want to reach your SDG goals, not only for women, but across all goals, the best, I think, antidote to that is to have a female Secretary General who will be just. In fact, if I look at it from the context of what we've discussed thus far, if it is an Indian, then you will be absolutely assured, because anytime you give an Indian a job, we get it done. if you look at Chaturanga and the concept on which Raisena Dialogues has been based, if there is a conflict, we are good at solving it. If there is a contest, we compete transparently. If there's a need to create